Disclaimer: this video contains discussions of real criminal cases and sensitive subject matter. It is created for educational and documentary purposes only. Viewer discretion is advised. All individuals are presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. She was someone's daughter before she was a case file. Someone's little girl with a scraped knee, a birthday wish, and a laugh that echoed in hallways. But the river kept her name. For 4 decades, she lay in the cold sequence of case numbers and weathered photographs, disappearing each year a little more from the living, and yet names have a way of rising, even from water. In April of 1981, the Ohio River gave up a secret it had been keeping for far too long. A fisherman cast his line expecting the usual, catfish, maybe a branch, but instead he pulled in a nightmare. Floating face down in the cold, muddy current was the body of a young woman. Her long dark hair was tangled in reeds, her skin pale, and her hands stiff from the chill of the water. There was no identification, no purse, and no one waiting to claim her. To the world, she became known only as the girl in the river. She was young, maybe in her 20s. The coroner noted bruising around her neck and wrists, signs of restraint and a struggle. She had been strangled, then dumped into the water. Whoever had done this wanted her gone forever. The only item recovered that might reveal who she was a gold ring with a small red stone engraved with 2 letters, MT. Police searched hospitals, missing persons reports, and jewelry stores, hoping the ring would lead to an identity. It didn't. For months, her face appeared in newspapers and bulletins across Kentucky, Ohio, and Indiana. Not one person came forward to say they knew her. Eventually, investigators buried her in a quiet cemetery under a small stone that read simply, Jane Doe, 1981. For nearly 40 years, that's all she was, a nameless young woman pulled from the water. Her file grew dusty in an evidence room. New crimes came, old detectives retired, and the world moved on, but the river never forgot. In 1998, a detective named Tim Adams reopened the case. Something about her haunted him. He ordered her remains exhumed for DNA testing, a technology still new at the time, but the sample was too degraded. There wasn't enough material to produce a usable profile. Once again, the investigation stalled. The girl in the river slipped back into silence. Years turned into decades. Her story faded into local legend, the kind of cold case people whispered about, the Jane Doe of Boone County. Then, in 2017, everything changed. The Boone County Sheriff's Office joined a national project using forensic genealogy, a revolutionary tool that had already exposed killers like Joseph DeAngelo, the infamous Golden State Killer. Investigators sent what remained of the unknown woman's bones to a specialized lab in Texas. Months passed with no word. Then, in early 2019, the phone rang. The lab had successfully extracted a full DNA profile. It was uploaded to a public genealogy database, one often used by people tracing family roots. Within weeks, there was a hit, a partial match to a woman in Arkansas who had uploaded her DNA out of curiosity. She was a distant relative of the unidentified woman. Using family trees and public records, genealogists traced the connection backward, generation by generation, until a name began to emerge. Margie Thompson, at 24, year, old from Louisville, Kentucky. She had vanished in April 1981, the very month the Jane Doe was found. Margie had been reported missing by her sister after she failed to come home from a date with a man named Jerry Marks, a local mechanic known for his temper. Police interviewed him back then, but without a body, there was no evidence to hold him. He claimed Margie had left town and moved on. The case went cold, just another missing person swallowed by time. When detectives revisited that file nearly 40 years later, everything lined up. The date, the location, even the ring, the red stone with M.T. engraved. It wasn't just a coincidence. The girl in the river had a name. In 2020, investigators tracked down Jerry Marks in Florida. He was 72 years old, living quietly under a new name. When officers showed up at his door, he denied everything. But neighbors remembered small details, a man who never liked talking about the past, who flinched at the mention of Kentucky. Investigators couldn't charge him. Too much time had passed, and the evidence that could have convicted him was long gone. But the truth was clear. The family of Margaret Thompson finally got the call they had been waiting for their entire lives. Her sister broke down when she heard the words, "We found her." For decades, they had wondered if she'd run away, if she was still out there somewhere. Now, they knew she hadn't left them by choice. In November 2021, a small memorial service was held in Boone County. Officials replaced the old stone that once read Jane Doe with a new one engraved with her full name, Margaret Margie. Thompson, 1957-1981, the river kept her, but love brought her back. Her sister stood beside the new headstone, holding the photo of Margie smiling, bright, alive, and hopeful. "We thought she was gone to the wind," she said softly. Turns out she was just waiting for us to find her. Her story became part of a larger movement sweeping the country. Cases once considered unsolvable being cracked by DNA and forensic genealogy. From the Golden State Killer to Buckskin Girl in Ohio to Lavender Doe in Texas, women who had been lost for decades were finally getting their names back. Science was doing what time couldn't, giving the forgotten their identity, their dignity, and their justice. Margie's case inspired detectives to pull more boxes from evidence rooms, re-examine more remains, and never assume that too old means impossible. Forensic genealogy became the bridge between silence and truth, a way to speak for those who couldn't anymore. The river may have tried to erase her, but persistence brought her home. Today, visitors leave flowers at Margie's grave. Some never knew her, but they know her story. They know she was more than a Jane Doe. She was someone's sister, someone's daughter, someone's friend, and her story, like so many others, reminds us that even after decades, the truth can still rise to the surface, because sometimes the dead don't stay silent. Sometimes they whisper through evidence, through DNA, through the people who refuse to stop looking. And when that whisper finally turns into a name, it's not just a victory for one case. It's a promise that no one, not even a girl lost to a river, will be forgotten. In April of 1981, the Ohio River surrendered a secret it had guarded for decades. Early that morning, mist rolled low across the current as a fisherman set out with a small boat and an old radio humming faintly in the background. He was used to the quiet, used to the way the water could hold its breath before sunrise. But that morning, the silence broke in the most chilling way possible. Caught in the reeds near the shore was the body of a young woman, face down, her hair fanned like ribbons in the current. She had been in the water for days. The current had carried her miles downstream before she settled there, lifeless, weightless, nameless. The sheriff's department was called, and deputies arrived to a scene that felt heavy with sorrow. They didn't know who she was, no identification, no purse, no fingerprints they could match. She was young, maybe in her early 20s, and she still wore a thin gold ring with a small red stone. Etched faintly inside the band were the initials M.T., the only clue they had. The coroner found bruises around her neck and wrists, but the cause of death was clear: manual strangulation. She had been murdered and dumped like trash into the Ohio River. Investigators canvassed nearby towns, combing through missing persons reports, but nothing matched her description. Flyers went out, a sketch was made, still no one called. To the local press, she became the girl in the river. To police, she was Boone County Jane Doe, and to the world, she was simply forgotten. For years, her case file sat on a metal shelf in the sheriff's office, gathering dust. New detectives came and went. A few reopened it, hoping new leads might surface, but every trail turned cold. The people who found her grew old, the witnesses moved away, and the story faded into whispers. Time, it seemed, had done what her killer wanted: erase her. But not everyone forgot. In 1998, Detective Tim Adams, then new to the department, came across her file while reviewing old homicide cases. Something about it wouldn't let him go. He drove to the small cemetery where she was buried under a stone that read only Jane Doe, 1981. Standing there, he made a silent promise. She would not stay nameless forever. Adams requested her remains be exhumed for DNA testing, a process still in its infancy, but the sample was too damaged by decades of burial. The lab couldn't build a full genetic profile. Adams was heartbroken. Without DNA, there was nothing more they could do. Years passed, he retired, others took over, yet the girl's file never left the evidence shelf. Then, in 2017, forensic genealogy changed everything. The Boone County Sheriff's Office partnered with a Texas lab that specialized in identifying unidentified victims using advanced DNA extraction and genetic genealogy. The remains were tested again, this time successfully. Scientists managed to pull a complete DNA profile, something that would have been impossible years earlier. When the results came back, they matched a distant relative from Arkansas who had submitted DNA for ancestry research. From there, genealogists built family trees, followed birth certificates, marriage licenses, and obituaries, painstakingly tracing branches until they landed on one missing leaf, a 24-year-old woman named Margie Thompson, who vanished from Louisville, Kentucky, in the spring of 1981. Margie's family had searched for her. She'd told her sister she was going out to dinner with her boyfriend, a man named Jerry Marks, a mechanic known for his temper. When she never came home, her family reported her missing. Police questioned Marks, but without a body, there was no proof of foul play. He claimed she had left town. The case went nowhere. Now, nearly 40 years later, detectives knew exactly who the girl in the river was. The initials MT on the ring matched. Her physical description matched. Even the timing aligned perfectly. After 4 decades of silence, Margie Thompson finally had her name back. Investigators tracked down Jerry Marks, now 72 years old, living under a new identity in Florida. They confronted him, but he denied everything. He said he hadn't seen Margie in years and that she must have moved on. Detectives knew he was lying, but there was no longer enough physical evidence to prosecute. The river had taken too much. Still, the truth had surfaced. The family of Margaret Thompson finally got the call they had waited for since 1981. Her sister broke down in tears, telling investigators, "We always hoped she'd come home. We just never thought it would be this way." In November 2021, Boone County officials held a memorial ceremony. They replaced the old gravestone that had read Jane Doe with a new one engraved with her name, Margie Thompson, 1957-1981. The river kept her, but love brought her back. Her sister attended, standing by the grave that finally bore her sister's name. "She was my best friend," she said softly. "For 40 years I thought she was gone to the wind. Turns out she was just waiting for us to find her." Margie's identification became one of many cases solved through forensic genealogy, a technology giving names back to the voiceless. Across the country, cold cases once deemed unsolvable were finally closing. Victims like Buckskin Girl in Ohio and Lavender Doe in Texas. both unidentified for decades, were identified through the same method that brought Margie home. Each story echoed the same truth. Science remembers what humans forget. DNA doesn't lie, it holds memories that time can't erase. Today, the small grave that once marked Jane Doe has flowers almost every week. Visitors who never knew Margie leave notes, prayers, even small tokens of remembrance for a woman who, for 40 years, was no one. But now she's more than the girl in the river. She's Margaret Thompson, loved, missed, and finally home, because sometimes the dead still speak. All it takes is someone willing to listen and to keep searching, no matter how deep the water runs. In April of 1981, the Ohio River swallowed the dawn in silence. Fishermen who came that morning expected the rhythm of ripples and the slow hum of water against the rocks, but one of them, James Parker, found something else. Floating just beyond his line was a young woman, face down, her long dark hair twisting like black silk beneath the surface. She looked fragile, almost asleep, until he saw the bruises circling her neck. The sheriff's department arrived within the hour. The woman was estimated to be in her early 20s. She wore a thin t-shirt and jeans, no shoes, no purse, and no identification. The only thing of value on her body was a small gold ring with a red stone, engraved with the initials MT. It was her only voice left. The coroner determined she had been strangled, then thrown into the river. No one recognized her face. She became Boone County Jane Doe. Days turned to months. Posters with her sketch appeared in gas stations, diners, and post offices across Kentucky and Ohio. Nothing came back. No missing person matched. It was as if she had appeared from nowhere and vanished just as quickly. Eventually, the town stopped talking about her. Investigators buried her in an unmarked grave near the edge of a cemetery. The headstone read only Jane Doe, 1981. Her story might have ended there if not for one detective, Tim Adams. When he joined the department in the late 1990s, the case caught his eye. There was something haunting about a woman stripped of her name. He requested her remains be exhumed and sent to a new forensic lab for DNA testing. The technology was primitive back then, and though they tried, the sample was too degraded. It yielded no results. Adams refused to give up, but the case went cold again. Years passed. The river continued its slow crawl past Boone County, and time kept burying her deeper. Then, in 2017, something extraordinary happened. The sheriff's office joined a nationwide forensic genealogy program, the same kind of science that would later identify the Golden State Killer. They decided to test the old remains again. This time, the technology was better, stronger. The bones still had a story to tell. Months later, a call came. The lab had managed to extract a full DNA profile. It was uploaded into a public genealogy database, and soon a small green leaf appeared next to her name, a match. A distant relative in Arkansas had unknowingly uploaded her DNA for ancestry research. Using that fragment, genealogists began building a family tree that stretched across decades, marriages, and states. At the end of one long branch, they found a missing leaf, Margie Thompson, a 24-year-old woman from Louisville, Kentucky, who vanished in April of 1981. The same month, Boone County Jane Doe was pulled from the river. Margie had been reported missing by her sister after a fight with her boyfriend, Jerry Marks, a mechanic with a violent streak. They had been seen arguing in a bar parking lot 2 nights before she disappeared. He told police she left town, that she wanted a new life. Without a body, there was no case. Her disappearance joined the long list of unsolved heartbreaks of the 1980s. 40 years later, detectives matched the DNA, the ring, and the timeline. There was no doubt. Boone County Jane Doe was Margaret Thompson. Her family was stunned. For decades they had believed she might still be alive somewhere, maybe married, maybe living under a new name. Now the truth hit like the river's cold current. She had been there all along, waiting to be found. Detectives located Jerry Marks in Florida, living under a different name. He was in his 70s, gray-haired, frail, and full of excuses. When questioned, he denied everything. He claimed he barely remembered her, but witnesses from Louisville remembered the night vividly. The yelling, the broken bottle, the sound of tires on gravel. One woman who worked at the bar recalled seeing Margie leave with him that night. Then nothing. There wasn't enough physical evidence left to charge him, but detectives knew what had happened. The Ohio River had been his accomplice. In 2021, Boone County held a memorial for Margie Thompson. Her old gravestone was replaced with one bearing her true name and the dates that marked both her life and her loss, 1957-1981. Beneath it, an inscription chosen by her sister read, "The river kept her, but love brought her back." The service was small. Just family, a few officers, and the same detective who had once stood over her grave 20 years earlier and promised she would be found. Flowers lined the soil, sunlight broke through the trees, and for the first time in 40 years, Margie wasn't just a Jane Doe. Her story became part of a national wave of cold cases solved through forensic genealogy. Cases like Buckskin Girl in Ohio, Lavender Doe in Texas, and Beth Doe in Pennsylvania. Each woman had been forgotten for decades. Each was identified through the miracle of science and the persistence of people who refused to let them fade into statistics. Margie's name was more than an identification. It was a resurrection. It was proof that truth doesn't drown. It only waits. Today, visitors still leave flowers by her grave. Some never knew her. Some just know her story, and that's enough, because the girl in the river is no longer lost, no longer silent. She has a name, a face, and a legacy that reaches beyond Boone County, beyond the years she was forgotten. The river tried to erase her, but love and persistence rewrote her ending. And as the current still winds through the heart of Kentucky, it carries her story. Reminder that no matter how deep the silence, the truth always finds its way to the surface. In April of 1981, the Ohio River gave back what it had tried so hard to hide. At dawn, a fisherman steering through the mist noticed something drifting near the bank. At first, he thought it was a mannequin, strange, lifeless, caught in the reed. But when he looked closer, he saw human hair. The river had kept her secret long enough. She was young, maybe 24, with long brown hair and soft hands. No identification, no purse, and no one searching for her. Around her neck were faint bruises. The coroner's report would later read, "Cause of death strangulation." A small gold ring with a red stone clung to her finger. Inside, 2 engraved letters, M.T. The county labeled her Jane Doe. Newspapers called her the girl in the river. After weeks of searching, investigators found no match. Missing persons reports across Kentucky and Ohio turned up nothing. She was buried under a headstone that read only Jane Doe, 1981. For the world, she disappeared again. Years later, the case haunted Detective Tim Adams, a rookie at the Boone County Sheriff's Office. He couldn't accept that someone could vanish so completely. In 1998, he ordered her remains exhumed, hoping new DNA technology might finally identify her. But the samples were too degraded. The case slipped back into the dark. 2 decades have passed. Files gathered dust. Memories faded, and her case number became just another cold file among hundreds. Until 2017, when a new kind of science began rewriting old tragedies. Forensic genealogy was changing everything. It had already caught the Golden State Killer and solved cases once thought impossible. Boone County partnered with a Texas lab to test the old remains again. The lab extracted DNA and uploaded the profile into a public genealogy database. For the first time in 40 years, the system responded with a match. A woman in Arkansas had uploaded her DNA for ancestry research. She turned out to be a distant cousin of the unidentified woman in the river. Investigators worked backward through birth records, marriage certificates, and family trees until they found a missing name, Margie Thompson from Louisville, Kentucky. Margie had been 24 when she vanished in April 1981. Her family remembered her as bright, stubborn, and full of life. She had dreams of becoming a nurse. In the spring of '81, she was dating a mechanic named Jerry Marks, a man known for his short temper. On April 12th, Margie told her sister she was going out to dinner with Jerry. She never came home. When her family reported her missing, Marks told police she had left town. Without a body, there was no case, and he moved away within months. Now, 4 decades later, Boone County detectives knew what had really happened. The initials MT on the ring matched her name. The timing, location, and even her build all fit perfectly. After 40 years, the girl in the river had a name. Detectives tracked down Jerry Marks in Florida, living quietly under an alias. He was in his 70s. When questioned, he denied everything. He said he hadn't seen Margie since 1981, but people from Louisville remembered him. A bar owner recalled seeing him and Margie arguing that night. A friend remembered how his truck had been freshly cleaned the next morning. The Ohio River had been his graveyard. With no physical evidence left, the case couldn't go to trial. But the truth was finally out. The silence that had shrouded her for 4 decades broke wide open. In 2021, Boone County officials replaced the headstone that had once read Jane Doe. It now bears her real name, Margaret Margie Thompson, 1957-1981. The river kept her, but love brought her back. Her sister stood beside the grave, tears streaming as she whispered, "We thought she was gone to the wind. Turns out she was just waiting for us to find her." Margie's identification joined a growing list of cold cases solved by forensic genealogy. Women like Buckskin Girl in Ohio and Lavender Doe in Texas, both unnamed for decades. Each one represented more than science. They represented the refusal to forget. Today, flowers and letters rest on Margie's grave. People who never knew her stop to leave small gifts. They've read her story and know that she was more than the girl in the river. She was someone's sister, someone's daughter, someone who mattered. The Ohio River has carried countless things away over the years, but this time it gave something back, the truth, because no matter how deep the current runs, truth has a way of surfacing, and for Margaret Thompson it finally did. In April of 1981, the Ohio River whispered its secret to the world. The water was calm that morning, thick with fog, when a fisherman spotted something drifting near the Boone County shore. At first he thought it was debris from the last storm, a log, maybe an old top, but as he drew closer, the shape took form, long hair, a lifeless arm. The fisherman froze. What floated before him wasn't driftwood. It was a young woman. Authorities arrived quickly. The scene was grim. She was found face down, tangled in weeds, wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans. No shoes, no purse, no identification. The coroner's report later confirmed the worst. She had been strangled. Whoever had killed her had tossed her body into the river, hoping the current would do the rest, but the river only hid her for a while. When detectives searched her belongings, they found one small clue, a gold ring with a red stone engraved with the initials MT. She had no scars, no tattoos, and no fingerprints in any database. Without a name, without a past, she became known only as Boone County Jane Doe, or, as locals began to call her, the girl in the river. Weeks turned into months. Police plastered her sketch across every news station and diner wall from Kentucky to Ohio. Families called in tips, hoping she might be their missing daughter, their runaway sister, but every lead ended in disappointment. No one came for her. In time, she was buried under a modest gravestone that read Jane Doe, 1981. For years, the wind and rain wore away the letters just as memory wore away her story. She became one of countless lost souls who vanished into the American landscape, until someone decided she deserved better. Detective Tim Adams was a young officer when he first saw her file. He couldn't stop thinking about her, the girl who had been erased by time. In 1998, he reopened the case, exhuming her body for DNA testing, a new technology then in its infancy. He hoped for a miracle, but the remains were too degraded, the DNA too faint. The results came back inconclusive. For the second time, she slipped into silence. Years passed. Detectives retired. New ones took their place, but the girl in the river remained unsolved. Then, in 2017, forensic genealogy began changing the way investigators looked at old cases. Across the country, victims once lost to time were finally being identified, their stories rewritten by strands of DNA. Boone County detectives decided to try one more time. They sent her remains to a state of the art lab in Texas that specialized in cold case DNA. Months passed with no word until the phone finally rang. The lab had done it. They had built a complete genetic profile. That profile was uploaded to a public genealogy database, and then the river finally gave back her name. The match came through a distant cousin in Arkansas who had submitted her DNA for ancestry research. Through family trees, birth records, and decades of tracing, genealogists narrowed it down to one missing woman, Margie Thompson, at 24. Year, old from Louisville, Kentucky. Margie had disappeared in April 1981. The same week the body was found, she had been reported missing by her sister after going on a date with her boyfriend, Jerry Marks, a local mechanic with a known temper. They had been together off and on for nearly a year. Friends recalled frequent arguments, bruises hidden under long sleeves, apologies that didn't last. That April night, neighbors heard yelling coming from Jerry's apartment. By morning, Margie was gone. He told police she'd left him, that she was moving to another city to start fresh. Without evidence and without a body, her case went cold. Now, 4 decades later, her initials on the ring matched perfectly. So did her DNA. The girl in the river was Margie Thompson. Detectives tracked down Jerry Marks, now an old man living in Florida under a different name. When investigators confronted him, he denied everything. "I don't know any Margie," he said. But witnesses remembered his outbursts, his sudden disappearance after Margie went missing, the way he sold his truck weeks later. They knew, everyone knew. Still, time had stripped the case of hard evidence. Without physical proof, prosecutors couldn't move forward. Marks would never stand trial, but the truth had already surfaced, and sometimes that's the only justice time can offer. In 2021, Boone County officials held a memorial service. A new stone was placed where Jane Doe once lay. This time it bore her full name, Margaret Margie Thompson, 1957-1981. The river kept her, but love brought her back. Her sister stood beside the grave, clutching a photo of Margie taken before she vanished. Her voice trembled as she said, "We thought she was gone to the wind. Turns out she was just waiting for us to find her." Margie's story became one of many cases solved through the quiet power of DNA science stepping in where memory had failed. Across America, nameless women once buried under Jane Doe markers were finally being identified. Buckskin Girl in Ohio, Lavender Doe in Texas, Beth Doe in Pennsylvania. Each case shared the same message. Every name matters, and no one is forgotten forever. Margie's identification gave her family closure, but it also gave hope to countless others still waiting for answers. She proved that even when the evidence fades, when decades pass and every lead seems lost, the truth can still rise from the depths. Now at the edge of the Ohio River, there's a small plaque bearing her name. Fishermen pass by it every morning, the same way one man did all those years ago when he found her. The current still moves, slow and steady, but somewhere in that endless motion lies a story finally at peace. Because no matter how far the water carries a secret, one thing is certain, it always finds its way home. Margaret Thompson's story is more than a cold case solved. It's a reminder that no one truly disappears. For 40 years, she was a nameless silhouette in a file, a forgotten face in a morgue photo, a ghost drifting through rumor and memory. But even in silence, her truth refused to die. Through the patience of investigators and the quiet miracle of DNA, her name found its way home. The Ohio River once carried her away, but love, persistence, and science brought her back. Today, her headstone bears her real name, her story told, her memory restored. She isn't the girl in the river anymore. She's Margaret Thompson, a sister, a daughter, a woman who mattered. And for every family still waiting, her story stands as proof that time doesn't erase the truth, it only buries it until someone cares enough to dig it back up. May she rest in peace, and may her name forever remind us that the lost are never truly gone, only waiting to be found.